Back when I started collecting video games, things were quite tolerable. eBay had just shown up and most Saturn games were well within my reach. This allowed me to collect hundreds of games fairly cheap, leading to a library I'm quite happy with today. But for those of you new to Saturn collecting, the prices in 2021 can be a sobering reminder of just how crazy things have gotten. Games that are now hundreds of dollars are commonplace, and it isn't unheard of for them to skyrocket into the thousands. This has likely turned away many of you. In this episode, I intend to dispel this myth by showing you 10 games you can buy today that will not cost you a fortune. Every one of these can be had for under $50, many of them quite a bit less. If you have been considering a Saturn collection, these games are also not a bad place to start. Let's go ahead and get started on Best Bang for Your Buck and the Sega Saturn. There's a lot of fighting games on the Saturn, and many of them are actually quite affordable. But if you're looking for something cheap with fantastic replay value, look no further than Street Fighter 02. This was released before the RAM cartridges made their debut, so it isn't 100% arcade accurate visually, but man is it still a great looking game. Sprites are large, color is exceptional, and the background's loaded with things to see. Of course, the gameplay is what's important in a fighter, and this one plays like a dream with the Saturn's controller. You'll hardly ever miss a fireball, uppercut, or charge move. It's just silky smooth execution start to finish. The Japanese version of this is the way to go. You can often get it for under $30, and the English options menu makes everything easy to understand. The artwork on the Japanese cover is also quite nice looking, making this a no-brainer for fight fans. If you would like to add Super Street Fighter 2 and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, there is a Street Fighter collection that includes those, as well as an enhanced version of 02 here for around $50 or so. For 3D fighters, look no further than the Japanese version of Fighter's Megamix. This one is often no more than $20 and is a great mix of Virtua Fighter and Fighting Viper's gameplay. It isn't quite as pretty as Virtua Fighter 2 on the Saturn, but you get some caged-in arenas, an expanded roster of fighters, and a unique system of opening up new characters via different routes. There's a lot to see and do in this one, and the price just can't be beat, considering it's a true exclusive and can't be played anywhere else in this form. There's not really any story to speak of, so the Japanese language isn't much of an issue either. $20 for one of Sega's best fighters is an absolute steal. Believe it or not, both Panzer Dragoon 1 and 2 can be gotten for around $30 a piece in Japan. That gives you access to two of the Saturn's best for a mere $60 or so. The art on the case and disc is another bonus, both of which blow their Western variants out of the water. You get the same great gameplay here as you do in any other version, but the story is in Japanese. That's actually okay, because to really understand what's going on, you're gonna have to do a little digging into the overall narrative of the series anyway. Since these are rail shooters and very arcade-centric in design, the gameplay is easy to pick up and enjoy. Both these games represent great graphics and sound for the Saturn as well. Part 2 has moments of real beauty, and it runs smooth as butter. If you were starting a Saturn collection, these are two solid choices to begin with. 3D shooters hadn't been much of a thing before these showed up, and the multi-directional gameplay is still unique even today. Even if you go with just one of them, $30 is well worth that investment. One of the cool things about the Saturn was Sega's devotion to releasing different types of games you really couldn't play anywhere else. Nights into Dreams certainly falls into that category. It's kind of like a platformer without the platforms. I know that sounds silly, but Nights is a hard one to stuff into a box and label. Basically, you fly around looping stages collecting things. You can play it for fun, or you can try and master the scoring system that grades you on your performance. It's all up to you. It has a great soundtrack, the visuals are appealing, and it has a hook that is difficult to explain. That feeling of flight and freedom is really well done, and you can mess around in it for hours. Both the original Nights into Dreams and Christmas Nights can be typically had for $25 or less. There's no major language barrier in either one, so the Japanese versions are again the way to go. You can also get it in combo packs with the 3D analog pad. For many of you, having a great multiplayer game in your lineup is important. Better still is having a great multiplayer game that also happens to have some killer graphics. Decathlete is a sub-$20 game for the Japanese Saturn that you just have to have. The gameplay here is of the tried and true track and field variety. In other words, mash those buttons to get your power up, and then you have to nail the timing of the action button to do well. There's actually a fair bit of skill involved, and once you get your friends and family involved, it's a hell of a party game. No language barrier here to mess things up either. It's one of the better looking games on the Saturn, running in the system's high resolution mode with some razor sharp textures and polygons and 60 frames per second. Easy to pick up and hard to put down. It's one of the Saturn's cheapest and best experiences. For those of you looking for a different kind of sports game, Steep Slope Sliders is a fine choice. If you have played these types of games before, you know what to expect. Pick your course, your snowboarder, and race down the mountain, doing jumps and tricks for the best score. This one isn't a visual stunner, but it plays well enough for the genre. You can usually get the Japanese version for around $35 or so, making it another affordable choice for those of you looking for something to play.
Now. Started.
The Japanese version of House of the Dead is another one that's quite affordable. Coming in at just $30 or so, this is a great playing game for 1 or 2 players. The appeal of this one is simple. You get to shoot zombies and other monsters. While this port failed spectacularly in the graphics department, it plays well and has enough of the arcade's appeal to make it worth owning. The options menu is in English, so you're good to go there, and the story, well, most of the spoken dialogue is in English as well. The only thing you have to trade is the red blood, which is now green, but that's a small price to pay for such a big savings. It also has some cool additions like a Saturn mode, a boss mode, and branching gameplay paths. The US version of this is crazy high, so the Japanese version is definitely the one to get. There were also boxed versions you could get with the Stunner light gun. You're gonna need a racing game, so you probably already know which one I'm gonna steer you towards. Sega Rally is one of the better racers on the Saturn. It looks nice, has some really nice tunes, and the gameplay is nothing short of phenomenal. Best part of this package is you can have the Japanese version of it for under $20. I mean, in the land of Saturn collecting, it doesn't get much cheaper and certainly rarely better. For those of you that have never played Sega Rally before, it's a straight up arcade racing game. You have a choice of a few cars, a few tracks, and you have to battle the time limit to improve. You don't have 20 menus to click through, and it doesn't bog you down with a bunch of garbage that takes 10 minutes just to get the race started. Jump in with both feet, crash into the wall a few times until you get better, and have a blast. You've had bad meals that cost more than this game, making it a must-own for those with the hardware.
Checkpoint. Take left. Medium right, maybe. Long, easy left. Caution, hairpin right. Long, medium left. Checkpoint.
Our most expensive game on the list, Sonic Jam, offers up all of the original Sonic Team Genesis games in one pack. You should still be able to find the Japanese version of this for under $50, and considering it has 4 solid games in one package, that ain't a bad value proposition. You also get the 3D Sonic world to play around in, with loads of media to explore. Since many of you would-be Saturn owners were fans of the Genesis, I feel this one is a good place to start. It's familiar and yet makes changes to the formula that should appeal to you. It also has an easy mode that should make it easily accessible to your kids, giving you both something to mess around with. I enjoy a good digital pinball game every now and then, and Last Gladiators is a solid entry for the Saturn. It looks nice, has a great soundtrack, and the physics are just good enough to feel like you are actually playing the real thing. The Japanese version is the cheapest option at under $20 or so, but this one surprisingly doesn't cost a fortune for a US copy. I think if you were trying to round out a decent variety among the first games you get for the Saturn, it's a great choice. It's among the better pinball games of the era and still holds up well today. Despite the fact that collecting old games can be very expensive today, I'm hoping that my list here illustrates that you can start a really decent collection without spending a fortune. Getting yourself wrapped up in the insanity of the collector's market can easily put you off of buying anything. Shooters that are $500, RPGs that are $1,000. I mean, the lengths that people go to own some of these games are well beyond the means of the average person. But that doesn't mean that you have to go without. If you were a Saturn owner as a kid and want to own it again, there are options out there just for you. If you have never owned a Saturn and want to explore its library, again, don't be afraid, there are some great games for you to play. You will notice that most of my choices here will have you delving into the Japanese market. Do not hesitate to explore this section of gaming. You may be afraid you'll run into barriers that make buying things tough, but the rules really are quite simple. The Saturn was region locked by default, so US games will only play on a US system, Japanese games on a Japanese system, so on and so forth. The good news is that there are numerous devices out there that will bypass this region lock with ease. The Pro Action Replay, or one of its many variants and knockoffs, will allow you to play what you want on your Saturn without any headaches. There's a whole world of affordable Sega goodness out there, and many more games that may interest you. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.